Good evening. It is Tuesday, June 16th, 2020 at 5 p.m. I'd like to call to order the Town of Sutton Select Board Zoom meeting. And as usual these days, I'd like to read the governor's orders. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Town of Sutton Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment in the public forum section. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. And just a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, so be careful what you share on your screen because it will become public information. So the meeting is called to order. The first order of business is public forum. Public forum is limited to 5 minutes per topic. Discussion or comments about town employees or agency members shall be avoided so as not to violate individuals' rights. Is there anyone here for public forum? And given that this is a Zoom meeting and I can see everybody, I don't think there is anyone here for public forum. So next up would be our select board minutes from June 2nd.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to accept our minutes from June 2nd, 2020 as presented.
Second.
That's a motion in a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Passes 5-0. Next up is board reappointments for the town and town manager reappointments. And we saw on Memorial Day, Jesse get his reading chops in order, and tonight he gets to use them again. So Jesse, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have several town officials seeking reappointment by the Board of Selectmen. First, we have Richie Deschaines, who's looking for reappointment for a 3-year position on the Board of Appeals. We have 2 3-year reappointments to the Board of Health, one by John Silverberg and the other by Ken Mallow Jr. We have a 3-year reappointment on Conservation Commission. That would be Mr. Andrew DeWolf. We have 2 reappointments on the Council of Aging, both are for 3 years. We have Rosemary De I should know how to say Rosemary's last name. I apologize, Rosemary. Rosemary De Gitano, as well as Gail Graves. We have 1 3-year reappointment to the Cultural Council. That's Pamela Nichols. We have 1 1-year reappointment to the Housing Authority, and that's Barbara Wade. And we have 1 3-year reappointment to the Planning Board, and that's Mr. Scott Paul. Also at the time, if I could, I would like to thank those who have given time to various boards who have requested that they are not reappointed. The first is Joyce Smith. I know Joyce pretty well, and I know that she was a teacher in the Sutton school system for 35 years. She also did 15 years on the Conservation Commission. And over the years that I've known her, she has tremendous integrity, and I know personally I'm going to miss seeing her face at the commission meetings. Paige Thayer is also not seeking reappointment on the Cultural Council. She did a great job with that. Mr. Mark Kellogg is not seeking a reappointment to the Historical Commission. And Larry Wurzmer is not seeking a reappointment to the Sewer Commission. These vacancies will be posted, and if any resident has an interest in volunteering to fill out a volunteer action form, which could be found on the town's website. And I assume because it's on the website, it can be submitted via email.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, Jim, if I could, I got one quick question. We have a couple of alternates already in place for the Conservation Commission. So I'm assuming that the alternates, if they are so inclined, one of the 2 will be bumped up.
Yeah, the meeting in July the 7th will have an agenda item appointing one of the alternates to the Conservation Commission position. Okay,
perfect. Thank you. All right. At the same time, we have a number of official positions that are going to be reappointed by the town manager. The first is the Animal Control Officer. That's Mr. Dan Chauvin. He's going to be getting a 1-year reappointment. We have Michelle LaFletch, who's going to be getting a 1-year reappointment as Animal Inspector. We have Robert Nunemacher, who's going to be getting a 3-year reappointment to the Board of Assessors. We have Laura Caruso, as well as Cheryl Lewinsky, who both are going to get 1-year reappointments as burial agents for the town. We have Chief Dennis Toll and Laura Caruso. Both will be getting 1-year reappointments as the town constables. We have 4 1-year reappointments to the emergency management. The first is Paul Maynard. Then we have Donald Conlon, Mr. Jeffrey Briggs, and Mr. Jeffrey Wilson. We have 6 1-year reappointments to the Emergency Planning Board. We have Cheryl Lewinsky, Chief Matt Balsito, Chief Dennis Toll, John Kuchar, Matt Stencil, and Mr. James Smith. We have 1-year reappointment as the Hazardous Waste Coordinator, and that's Fire Chief Matt Balsito. And last but not least, we have a 1-year reappointment as Parking Clerk, and that honor goes to Miss Laura Caruso. And that, Mr. Chairman, is all I have.
Excellent. I believe I've got a lot of paper on my desk, but I believe we have a motion for the, I'm sorry, before we get to that. First of all, thank you for reading those, Jesse, but if there are any comments that you'd like to make, Jim, I don't know if you have any discussion goals with this. Are you good?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, Jesse, do you have any comments you'd like to make on this?
As I usually do, I injected my comments as we went along. And obviously, I would like to thank everybody, not only the town officials for accepting, you know, these leadership positions in town hall, but also the residents as well, because as we all know, giving up our own personal time to volunteer for the boards is a tremendous asset to our town. So thank you to everybody who sought either appointments or reappointments this year.
Thank you, Wendy.
Just very briefly to echo Jesse's sentiments, I appreciate the volunteers as well as department managers and other municipal employees for stepping up. So thank you so very, very much.
Excellent. Jonathan.
Yeah, the same here. I just want to thank everybody who's stepped in to take these positions and help our town. You know, many of it being volunteer, you know, that runs the town, and that they step in and help our town be what it is, and that they're providing their time, their personal time to do this. And also, I just also want to thank the 4 folks who've decided to step down, and, you know, like Joyce and Paige and Mark and Larry. I personally know Joyce and Mark. Mark was on the Historic Commission back when I was on there, you know, many years ago, and he served for a long time. And then Joyce, I had her as my biology teacher in high school, and you know, then she's just a figure around town that really has passion for the town, and her you know, her commitment and her desire to make the town a better place, and being on the Conservation Commission. So I just want to particularly shout out for them, because I know them well, and so just, yeah, that's all I have to add, but just thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Jeff?
Just to echo what everyone else has said about the importance of the jobs that all these folks do, as well as just a recognition of the time and the commitment that it takes to do all these. So thank you to all that we're appointing tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard to really add to that. Appreciate everything you guys have said, to recognize the people that work so hard to keep our town running. So it's great to take this opportunity to thank people for the effort that they do put in. And certainly when you look at the names of people that are stepping down from positions that they've held for so long, you really sort of get this sense of time passing within the community, that people that have been sort of vanguards of various areas for long periods of time. It's interesting to watch, and every year that we see this happen, you get that sense. So, but thank you to them all. So now we have a motion. So we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but why don't we just go in order? Wendy, do you mind just taking that? Do you have that in front of you? You're muted.
Sorry, it's on my other desk, so I don't have it in front of me at the moment.
All right then, Jonathan, you're up.
I can take it. Yep. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve as read appointments made by the select board in the town manager selectmen.
Second.
That's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of this one, I guess we'll do live. David Hall, aye. Wendy?
Wendy Mead, aye.
Jesse Lemanik, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
Jeff Gannon, aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Next up is some COVID-19 outdoor dining guidelines. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board has this in front of you. It's an extensive list of guidelines. Obviously, with the governor's state of emergency during COVID-19, there really is only takeout only at local restaurants. In an effort to provide greater flexibility for these businesses, that some of which are struggling at this point in time, we've created these guidelines that allow for, greater flexibility and even timeliness, and I'll get to that in a minute. In the interest of expediency, we have sent these guidelines out to all 11 restaurants in the town of Sutton. The building commissioner, John Kuchar, has visited some of them that are interested in following up and creating an outdoor dining experience. Particularly Brickstones and Schultz's have an interest in doing this, but we have communicated with Jim's Pizza and the KP's Diner and all of the outdoor or restaurants that have licenses in the town of Sutton. So, so John is working with them. We have a couple of applications from Brickstones and Schultz's that, they still haven't decided exactly what they want, but they are interested in increasing the opportunity to get business at their various restaurants. So I am asking the board for some direction. Right now, all restaurants have a copy of this policy. Many of them are considering if it applies to them. Schultz's has been working with the landlord of that development to see where, where he can have tables outside of the restaurant. So they are planning on, and with the landlord's permission, taking a couple of parking spots for some tables, and obviously it's 6 feet apart, et cetera. So, and probably the same with Brickstones. They are looking at a couple of options right now. They appear to be looking at a scenario with outside dining tables behind the restaurant, and the dirt parking lot to the rear of the property. So, we're just trying to be customer friendly for restaurants that are really struggling there at this point in time, and nobody wants to see these restaurants go under. And so obviously during the governor's state of emergency, our options are limited, but we're trying to create some options for various restaurants that are interested in pursuing it. Ultimately, what I would like, again, in the interest of expediency, is for the board to take a vote to authorize the administration to issue permits to these various restaurants. Obviously, John Kuchar will be involved. The Board of Health and myself will review all permit applications. Where they have a liquor license, they will need to get a temporary license from the board. And we can, everybody that has a liquor license, we can, and they have a plan that's approved, and we can fill out that application and put that in the foyer for the board to sign. It's a temporary occupancy, temporary license. that will go to probably November 1st or as soon as the COVID restrictions are lifted in the state. So whichever comes first. So I present this as a possibility to hopefully provide some more flexibility for some of these struggling businesses.
Okay, thank you. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, is there going to be any type of fee affixed to any applicants who would seek these outside permanent permits?
No.
Okay, good. Because obviously, to your point, and I definitely appreciate the fact that you're willing to mention this. You know, you're reading in the newspapers, more and more businesses are just closing up because they're no longer sustainable. I was just reading in the paper today, there was a restaurant in Worcester that had been there for multiple generations, just gone and lost. So thank you. And I'll definitely agree with the idea of expediting it. Because I think at one point we got a draft that mentioned that they would have to come before us. And again, to me, I just foresaw that as being a delay. So I am fully in favor, and I trust your judgment, John's judgment, Charles' judgment. And again, let's be honest, as you said, we have 11 facilities, businesses in town that have common vics. They've been before us multiple times. I'm sure we've all eaten there. They're, places that we trust. So anything I think that we can do to help them sustain, particularly in this current state of the shutdown that's continuing, I think that will be a very positive reflection of Town Hall. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Wendy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I think the proposal that was provided to us, it makes perfect sense. And I echo Jesse's sentiments that I think it's critical for these businesses. I just had one question. I wasn't sure from the diagrams that were provided to us, do the barriers need to be permanently installed, or can they use something, similar to cones and caution tape? I know there's a height requirement, but I wasn't sure about the actual structure.
Yeah, that's a good question. What John Kuchar is doing is meeting with these individuals, walking through the planning process, and being as flexible as he can, but he needs to ensure the safety of everybody, both if they're utilizing parking spots within the parking lot. You obviously have customers entering that parking lot that there's an issue. You need to make sure that the restaurant attendees are safe, as well as the drivers entering the parking lot are safe. So that's, I trust John Kuchar to work with the owners to come up with a plan that the landlord supports and everybody supports before it's presented to the selectmen to sign off.
I think it's great. I know neighboring communities have already started doing it. So I'm glad that the restaurant owners don't need to come before us and just delay the process. So I appreciate everything that you did in putting that together. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Jim, thank you.
So from my perspective, I absolutely agree with Jesse and Wendy. I think we should expedite this process, obviously within the guidelines and making sure that it's safe. I do not think we should be the barrier to getting them aligned with coming to our meeting, based on a date that we have. I'm fine with coming, things being approved and that we just come to sign off on that. But we don't need the businesses to come before us. In my mind, I totally trust that you and John and the business owners and their potential landowners or building owners can work it out. I just believe we need to do everything possible to allow these businesses to bring in more customers during this time. I mean, this can't come fast enough to open up these businesses, and this is just one little way to give them some more options. But for me, this cannot happen fast enough. I just do not want to see people's hard-earned, sometimes probably lifetime effort to put these businesses together and see it go away. So again, I agree. We just need to expedite this within the guidelines of making sure that it's safe, but move forward as quickly as possible and not let us be that slow it down. So that's where I stand.
Great, thank you. Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 100% agreement with Wendy and Jesse and Jonathan. If we can remove as many barriers as possible to getting these restaurants back, I think we should do it. We should expedite it. Jim, I just want to clarify on the restaurants with the liquor licenses. Do they have to come before the board still to get that permit, or is that something that we can delegate authority to either you or the chairman?
Well, here's the thing. I can issue the go-ahead, but ultimately at the next select board's meeting, the board would have to agree to sign a temporary license agreement. And that can be, I can put it in the foyer, and as long as we get 3 signatures that authorizes it, and then they can go ahead and start serving alcohol outside. But most restaurants that don't have an alcohol license, they can, if the board agrees, start right away. As soon as they have a plan that's accepted by the administration, they have permission to go ahead. My concern is with the alcohol licenses, as you know, the Board of Selectmen or Select Board is the licensing authority, and you folks really have that power. So it's really up to the board how you would like to proceed with that. My biggest concern, and I think most of the Select Board has mentioned this, is delays. With from this meeting to July 7th, that's roughly 3 weeks. And so, if we get a request from Brickstones, can we do it now? We're ready to go. We've got the plan. John Kuchar agrees to it. The administration agrees. And then they've got to wait 3 weeks to the next select board meeting. So that's the only issue I would have.
Yeah, that would be my concern too, that there'd be some delay before they could come before us, before they could start serving. So that's, other than that, that's my, I'm a full in favor of doing what we can to expedite it.
So that sounds like an open question to me. Can we cede that authority to you for this purpose now, for the alcohol piece of it?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Dave?
Do we have the ability to extend the authority during this temporary kind of provisions on the alcohol license to the town manager, or does that really have to come before us as the licensing authority?
I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, so that's what it is for now, until we have another plan. So I guess, echoing all the same things in terms of being able to expedite the process that all of the rest of the board members have mentioned. I guess my question is the work that's John's doing, is that more about public safety and the building requirements or the setup requirements as opposed to the specific governor's guidelines around COVID-19 safety plans? Is he really kind of doing both of those things?
Well, he's certainly handling the safety and where the seating will go, but he's working closely with Cheryl Lewinsky on the guidelines of COVID-19, the separation and et cetera. So Cheryl's sort of handling the Board of Health aspect of this, and John is handling the safety and the structures, and they will be temporary structures, easily removed and moved around if necessary. But that's how we're planning to proceed with John and Cheryl working together. So
we're doing the best that we can to ensure that they meet all of the COVID-19 governor's requirements. But if for some reason somebody gets a license and then there's some concern about whether they really comply, that's on them and not on us.
Yeah, I mean, Certainly, you know, there is personal responsibility here, but they will have to fill out the form that does have a section on, you know, outdoor dining, COVID-19 safety protocol. And they need to attest to that and agree to it. You know, and then Cheryl Owinski will have to follow up and inspect periodically to make sure they're in compliance. But my guess is most of our businesses, our restaurants will be in compliance with their plans.
Okay. You know, I guess so. The only thing I would add to all of this discussion is really for the residents of town to just be aware that we're going to have, or we might possibly have some restaurants that are going to have some of this outdoor seating arrangements in some places that you know, were formerly parking lots or traffic areas or things like that, and just use caution anytime you're around any restaurant in town, because there could be some changes to the way things are set up, and we just want everybody to be safe. Okay, so with that, I think, Jeff, if you want to take this one.
Certainly, yep. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve reopening guidelines for individual food establishments upon recommendations by the building commissioner and the Board of Health. In addition, a temporary license will be issued by the Select Board with an expiration of November 1, 2020, or until the order issued by Governor Baker is rescinded, whichever comes first.
Second.
Thank you. That's a motion in a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? David Hall, aye.
Wendy Mead, aye.
Justin Lemanik, aye.
Jonathan Anderson, aye.
Jeff Chairman, aye.
Excellent. That is 5-0. Appreciate it. Good luck to all the restaurants out there.
You know, Mr. Chairman, let me just add that the Brickstones already has an application in that is requesting seating behind their restaurant in the you know, back area behind. So I don't know whether the board feels comfortable approving that license or giving a temporary authorization of that license so they can start serving immediately. Obviously, John Kuchar and you know, everybody will be made aware in the administration that this is going on. Obviously, the police chief and fire chief will be in that decision making as well. But I would like to move forward with the application that Brickstones has in for prior to July 7th, if that's okay.
Are you talking about just the outdoor seating, or are you talking about alcohol?
Yeah, the alcohol license at Brickstones.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, Jim, do they already have a plan, sketched out plan, something that was articulated, something that John and Cheryl are in the process of reviewing?
Yes, that's correct. They already have that in.
And so for clarity, right, that we've already given them authority to serve, but that authority is just inside.
That's correct.
So all we're talking about here is the difference between extending or keeping it inside and extending it to this outdoor seating area.
Yeah, in some ways it's not much different than the Dudley Gendron, and they get the one-day alcohol license to serve during their, you know, fall chicken barbecue, you know, and they do that and, you know, serve hundreds of people outside of their license.
Yeah, but you know, I have to say, I always viewed that as a different kind of event than their normal thing that they do. Whereas to me, this is just, you know, this is just which side of the glass the seating is on. They're right. Doing the normal thing that they do. They're just doing it with some tables in a slightly different location. I don't feel, I feel like this is a different kind of activity than like when the Dudley Gendron does their chicken barbecue. I mean, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, and maybe there's still some technical things regarding the alcohol license that we're required to sign off on, but to me, this doesn't feel like as big a difference as the one-day licenses.
Okay.
So Jim, would that just require at least 3 members of the board coming by to sign off on that license?
That's correct. Yeah, I would develop, prepare the temporary license, and it would, I'd put it in the foyer for the board signature.
Okay, fantastic.
Mr. Chairman, I'm in agreement with you. It seems like what we're doing here is just having an extension of indoor seating with where we actually have physical barriers that we're requiring that the tables and the customers will stay within. So I agree that I see it as a different type of situation than a one-day outdoor event.
Okay.
So I'm in agreement as well. Sorry.
Yeah,
Could I ask one question, Mr. Chairman?
please do.
Jeff, you just kind of triggered a thought in my mind. You're right, to a degree, there is no extension. What difference does it make if they bring, say, a nice glass of wine over to your table inside or to a table outside? But that does beget the question, what about restrooms and access to restrooms? If they're going to be putting it outside behind, does Brickstone or the review process have the ability to ensure that guests will have access to bathrooms, or is indoor access going to be denied?
Yeah, I don't see anything that requires restroom access in this application.
Okay, so I'm just thinking of it from the guest experience perspective. If you're going to go and you're going to have a couple of drinks and you're not going to be able to use the facilities, as it were, that may kind of temper the experience, if you will. So I would hope, and I'm sure Cheryl probably has a very good pulse on the guidelines as they're coming from, the governor's office. I would just ask if you could just have her take a look at that. Because again, I would, at least for me personally, might be a little upset, to have a good meal and have a couple of glasses of wine or something like that, and not be able to at least partake in the facilities, as it were.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point.
All right, thank you.
So, I guess going back to the question of what we can do about this, right? That it does appear that there's, it says the establishments with a liquor license must adhere to the ABCC's guidelines for extension of premises to patio and outdoor areas. The question is that a separate license that we have to issue? And then I guess the second question is, if that's the case, do we have to have some kind of public hearing or meeting about that, or can we just come down and sign that when one comes up?
I believe we can give a temporary license. We're in a state of emergency right now, and so we're trying to obviously, be as flexible as possible, rather than requiring advertising, having a public hearing to issue that would draw this out significantly.
Does not the governor's orders, though, or guidelines, when he allowed for takeout, did not he extend the right of any existing license holder for alcohol to be able to sell alcohol with the takeout? And isn't that, to a degree, the same process here?
Yeah, I would think it would be, because, obviously the state is doing what it feels it can to help these businesses with takeout, because there is no in-restaurant seating capacity at this point in time.
Right. Yeah. Well, if again, I was right, so, that
yeah, I believe.
Sorry, I apologize. You're having a little lag, or maybe it's a lag on my end. But yeah, if the governor has extended the right to be able to include a can of beer or a bottle of wine with your takeout, I would imagine to a degree that their existing license that's in existence would cover this type of exception. Because obviously once the restrictions are lifted and everyone's allowed to go back in, I'm sure the businesses are immediately going to break these down and focus on the service that they are designed to deliver.
Yeah, our wonderful executive secretary just advised me that the state is giving local government the ability to approve these without a public hearing.
Great.
Perfect.
So can we agree to do this? Would this be reasonable to the board? Can we grant Jim the authority to issue a temporary license long enough for us to then meet at our next meeting and make it permanent?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I have no opposition to that either.
Yeah.
Jesse, you want to just make a motion to that extent?
Oh, sure. I wasn't necessarily paying attention. I would, Mr. Chairman, if I may, could I make a motion to authorize Jim Smith as the town manager, the purview to issue a temporary liquor license to any applicant looking to include it with outdoor dining?
Second.
And can I just clarify that's extended to people that already have
Pre-existent alcohol licenses, yes.
Great. That's a motion and a second. Any discussion about that? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. That's 5-0. Excellent. I think that's good. I appreciate that.
Good idea, Mr. Chairman. Good idea, Jim. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have an emergency addition to our agenda tonight. So this was not posted as part of our original agenda. However, I think we are allowed in certain circumstances to have emergency agenda items. This one is regarding COVID-19 emergency overspending. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been in touch with the Department of Revenue up at the state regarding this issue. We have decided to hold off on applying for the CARES Act reimbursement of various items that we are looking to purchase. We've issued purchase orders for laptops and Chromebooks for department heads and the students at the school. However, the delivery of these items might not be within the typical time frame when we close our books prior to July 15th or the 60-day rule. So what we're asking for is the board to authorize the chairman of the Board of Selectmen to sign a letter to DOR allowing the town permission to spend in excess of our appropriation due to reimbursement from FEMA, MEMA, and the COVID-19 CARES Act grant. You know, this was late last week that this was going on, and I didn't have a chance to get on the agenda, so I apologize for that. But, you know, right now we are looking at to apply for roughly $110,000 in the CARES Act. You know, that would be $110,000 potential hit on our free cash. By the board agreeing to have the chairman sign this letter, that would prevent that from happening. Our free cash would be held harmless due to this letter to DOR, and we would have the authority to apply for the CARES Act when we deem it appropriate. You know, we've ordered these items, but they haven't been delivered yet. And you know, obviously a lot of communities are ordering these items at the same time. So, you know, if there's a backlog and everything else, it puts our free cash, or at least a certain percentage of our free cash, in danger. And this would allow us to get our full free cash certified by the state.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Jesse?
That makes sense?
Yep. One quick question in terms of billing. Obviously, the orders were put in place, and I can imagine, again, Chromebooks and supplies and stuff like that. I could definitely understand there being a backlog. But what say something does slip through Are we going to be able to hold off payment until we receive the funds, or will payment be issued and then whatever account that the money's drawn off of after the close of the fiscal year, then it could be filled in at town meeting retroactively?
Yeah, if we get a good question, if we get assurance from the federal government that certain items are 100% reimbursable, and we apply or we request these items purchase these items, and we don't have them delivered for a long period of time, then we'll be fine. You know, Tim can set up a deficit account for a grant, and we can spend in deficit awaiting for reimbursement from the federal government. You know, this often happens with FEMA reimbursement for major storms. You know, we
Right.
get FEMA reimbursement a year and a half after the storm took place. But, you know, Tim does a nice job accounting for that in a deficit account.
Okay, good. Because I couldn't imagine that any supplier would be inclined to sell any products having to wait until the federal government moved to issue funds. So thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Wendy, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually don't have any questions. I think it's, pretty straightforward, and Jesse's question really tied up some loose ends there. So I am all set on this matter.
Great, thank you. Jonathan?
I'm all set as well. I think this makes sense. And yeah, Jesse's questions kind of light it up, so I'm good.
Thank you. Jeff?
No questions, nothing to add to it. I'm good with it.
All right. Sounds good to me then. I'll leave it alone. Jesse, do you have this one in front of you? The motion?
Hold on, I'm switching. Actually, I don't. Could I defer to Jeff or Jonathan?
Sure.
Yeah.
Who's up?
I can do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize Chairperson Hall to sign the letter to DOR for emergency spending in excess of appropriation, Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 31, due to COVID-19.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Passes 5-0. I'm sorry, I'm changing protocol partway through. So. All right, thanks everybody. Hang on. We're up to town manager's update. Is that where we are? I lost my agenda.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, Jim, I'll leave it up to you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first is Prime Metals is still moving forward. Their construction is sort of wrapping up, which is wonderful news. A preliminary inspection took place last week with John Kuchar, Matt Belcito, Larry Morris, doing a full inspection of the facility. They passed with flying colors. At the next select board meeting on July 7th, the Prime Metals and Skinnell, you may recall that Skinnell actually is the landowner and leasing it to Prime Metals. Will be coming before the board for a public hearing for the fuel storage up to 185,000 cubic feet of compressed natural gas. And obviously the fire chief will be at that meeting. The issue with the compressed natural gas is because we don't have yet to complete the project of providing natural gas to the industrial park. We did receive a $2.1 million state grant to provide natural gas to Prime Metals. The Eversource, we're working with them, and they are working to provide that. But in the interim, because they want to open up and get, doing their business, we've come up with the storage of compressed natural gas and the storage tanks that will hold that supply. So that's what that's all about. You'll hear more on July 7th from Chief Belcito. The Cupola repair project, this has been a long-term project. It was a capital item approved probably 3 years ago in the capital plan. It is currently out to bid. Bids are due in mid-July. It's really a small project, to be honest. It's the top of Town Hall. There's a cupola on the east section of Town Hall, and it's so high up, it's difficult to get to. But it's you know, the wood's chipping. It's sort of decaying. So we need to go up there and repair it and clean it up. John Kuchar did an inspection of the Congregational Church, where he spoke with the contractor about the work that he was doing and the lifts and everything. And that contractor said I could do that job. So John was encouraged by that, and he thought now's the time to go out to bid and see if he or anybody else will bid on this project. We have $25,000 for this project, so we'll have to wait and see if that's enough. But you know, I just assume get going on this type of project because it's been out there for a few years. Town Hall reopening. We were open June 8th for appointments only. We have had a few people come into Town Hall. They've had their temperature taken by the Board of Health, and that's been recorded. You know, transfer station stickers went on sale online. We've sold now over 200, probably 230 transfer station stickers within a little over a week's period of time. So people are getting the message to purchase transfer station stickers online. Donna Wood, our collector, actually deals with all the transfer station stickers requests. They come in, she gets the payment, and then she mails out the sticker with the appropriate information. So it's working wonderfully, and appreciate the treasurer collector's support with this whole operation. Annual goals meeting. This is something we have every year, generally in July, sometimes in August. We don't know what's going to exist, whether we're going to be able to sit down at Blackstone National Golf Course like we normally do. I don't think that's going to happen within the next 30 days. So I just, I'm kind of stuck I'd like the board to provide some direction. We do have a couple of options. We've got Goddard Lodge down at Marion's Camp that was recently renovated. It's a beautiful building. Granted, it's a shell of a building. There's some, it's wide open spaces inside. We do have power to that building. So we could have it there. We could have it up on the pavilion at Goddard Lodge, at Marion's Camp. So a number of different external meeting areas, but I'll leave that up to the board and further discussion. That's essentially it for updates. Just a reminder, the town election is, town meeting is Monday, this coming Monday, the 22nd, and the town election is from 12 to 4 on Tuesday, June 23rd. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, great update as always. Thank you. Definitely very excited to see the progress at Prime Metals. And I think anything that we can do, obviously, to accommodate them getting that wonderful facility up and running as quickly as possible, I think that will definitely be to our benefit as well as theirs. So I look forward to seeing what the chief has to say at our next meeting. I'm glad that you'd mentioned the First Congregational Church, because obviously the restoration project is coming up beautifully. And for a long time, Town Hall was looking a little better than the First Church, and now the church is kind of got a leg up on Town Hall. So agree, Jim. I think it's a good time to take care of this, and hopefully we're able to get some beneficial bids come through the process. I happen to, for full disclosure, I happened to pop into Town Hall. I believe it was yesterday, if not. Yeah, it was yesterday. It was Monday. And I actually get to witness firsthand an appointment that was scheduled with John Kuchar. whoever set the appointment must have called in, had the agreed to time. John came outside, closed the door, maintained social distance. The person who was there talking about the permit had the mask on. And again, it was just, I know it's not ideal, but I think it's going to work at least for the time being. So I know, Jim, that you were involved and everyone else in town hall that worked to come up with this opening plan. I think it's going to get us through to the time when we can have the grand reopening, as it were.
Yeah, I agree. You know, typically, you know, John Cooten gets a lot of appointments for building permits. People are still active going out with construction and everything. And John, rather than putting people through the rigmarole of having their temperature taken, having that recorded, and coordinating with the Board of Health, he tends to meet with clients or residents outside of town hall. So
right. Plus, yesterday was a gorgeous day. So, given the choice of being inside or outside, I'd take the convertible top if possible. Transfer station. I would also like to welcome back Dave Arsenal. I went down and I did my recycling and my trash today, and I was so happy to see that Dave is back on the job. I know him pretty well, and I know he was eager to return. But he happened to mention to me how seamless that the sticker process is. He's just amazed at how residents are just latching onto it. And this could be the new normal, if you were. I don't like that term, but at least in terms of the sticker process, you know, people utilizing the technology that's there. It's easier. It takes a little stress off him, takes a little stress, because I know there's some days that Donna Wood goes down on the weekends and helps out with sticker sales. So if this works, you know, this is wonderful. So a positive that came from our little COVID experience. In terms of the goals meeting, I would be more inclined, just for safety in terms of the weather, because you never know what summer's going to bring, that we definitely look towards an indoor venue. I think Goddard Lodge is definitely a good choice. I haven't been in it since the project's been completed. So at least for my own curiosity's sake, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to go in. The other thing is, if for some reason that doesn't work, there's always Darling Barn up at Waters Farm. I know they have tables there and everything, so that might be a possibility. But again, I'm comfortable with whatever setting that we choose as a board. So I'll listen to my colleagues and hear what their thoughts are, and I'm inclined to go along with the majority on this. And of course, town meeting and vote. Exciting next week. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jim.
If y'all don't mind, since we're on the topic of the goals meeting, why don't we just take that one item and talk that through as a group? So Wendy, if you're good with that, why don't you go next?
And that was our summer meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, I lost you there for a second. Yeah, I think indoor, an indoor solution makes the most sense. I certainly don't want to get stuck in a thunderstorm or something else. I'm completely open as to where it may be. I actually thought the idea of Darling Barn was a great idea. You know, we can pick up takeout somewhere and support a local business and, you know, have our meeting. I don't want to risk not having it, because I think it is really critical. But yeah, I'd like to see it at an indoor venue if at all possible.
Okay. Jonathan?
Yeah, I agree with that. I particularly like the addition of us picking up takeout from one of our local businesses or multiple. Because originally I was thinking maybe we could like reserve the outdoor space, but I agree it could be a really humid day. We can't control the weather. So, but I agree. I'm comfortable with it indoors, Goddard Lodge, Darling Barn, or wherever we choose. But yeah, I think that definitely works. And I also believe that this is a really important meeting for us. So I do not want to miss it.
Jeff, your thoughts?
Indoor takeout works for me. And I agree with my colleagues. This is it's such a critical meeting at this point in time. So I think it work to make sure it happens, and that'd be good.
Great, thank you. You know, for the benefit of those watching us, our goals meeting is actually a public meeting, like any meeting that we have. But traditionally we've taken it off site and nobody really attends, but we do. So I would vote for God and Lodge myself. I think I haven't been there since it was done, as Jesse said. So it'd be great to go there and kind of just check it out while we're having our meeting. And then depending on the weather and the circumstances, it seems like if it seemed like a better thing to do in the moment, we could move it to the pavilion because they're right there. And then if somebody from the public were to show up, then I think the posting would sort of allow for us to be that flexible. Yeah. So if it turned out to be kind of a hot, stuffy night and you couldn't get, and you didn't want to be inside, then maybe we could do it at the pavilion. I don't know if that's okay or not, but.
Works for me.
But that, unfortunately, my first thought was to do it at outdoor seating at the restaurant, but, the privacy just wouldn't really be a good way to do it. So that would be my thought, Jim. I don't know if that helps you. Is that enough to go on for you?
It does. Now I'm looking at, dates, in July, we have the meetings on the 7th and the 21st. Would people be available for the 28th of July?
Well, I'm not going out of town, that's for sure.
I would if I could, but I have nothing planned. So as of right now, at least from my perspective, the 28th works.
I'm available as well.
I mean, it's fine with me.
Works for me.
It works for me as well.
We typically do that at 6 o'clock, correct?
We have in the past, yes.
Does anyone have trouble, given the circumstances, moving that up to, say, 5:30? Jonathan, I think getting out early is tough for you, right? So
that's fine. I mean, I usually am available right after 5, so it's only a 10-minute drive from where I live. So 5:30 would be fine.
And as I'm in the part of town that has most of the restaurants, I could pick up the takeout en route to help you out, Jonathan.
Sounds like a deal.
All right, that sounds good. All right, Wendy, if you want to just sort of pick up from there.
Sure. I just had 2 quick comments. I am thrilled to see how well things are going with the transfer station stickers. I think moving it to online was a fantastic idea and probably will work going forward too. So I think that's great. Yeah. Prime Metals, it seems like just the other day we had the groundbreaking. It was a little cold and windy. So I'm excited to see the facility and, see where things stand now. So I'm just pretty excited about that. But that's all I have for this evening, except for my barking beagle. So I'm going to mute myself.
Great. Thank you. Jonathan.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see the progress with Prime Metals. Time has flown, and it's great that the construction was able to keep going during this time, and that they can get their business up and running in a new facility. It's very exciting, so I'm very happy about that. The Cupola repair, I think that makes absolute sense. Definitely check in with the Congregational Church to see how much it cost them. I forget the number off the top of my head, but it'll give you kind of a range of what we think it would cost, because that was a pretty big project. So I think $25,000 would be more than enough. And let's see, town hall reopening. I'm glad that the system is working. I think we've also benefited from just not having a very rainy period of time, so it's easy for meetings to happen outside. But I'm just glad that we're able to kind of allow people, especially with John Kuchar and all the people that need to meet with him and the different projects that are going on in town, having the ability to see him and to go through things I think is critical, and having a mechanism for that is important, so we don't slow those projects down. So other than that, that's all I had.
Great.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really have anything to add that hasn't been discussed and mentioned already, so I'll move things along to you.
Thank you very much. Jim, thank you for the update as always. Like Wendy, I was thinking about Prime Metals in our groundbreaking ceremony, which at that point they thought it was going to take just a little bit over a year. So all things being equal, it doesn't feel like they're all that far behind from what their original timetable was. So that's encouraging. Happy to hear that on their behalf. So it sounds like our grand opening ceremony itself will take a little bit of time, but so be it. I'm glad you're back, Wendy, because the only thing I want to say about the Cupola project is just watching your reaction. I just think you like that word, Cupola.
My reaction was more based on the fact that my beagle was in here barking.
Okay. Town hall reopening. So the senior center is still basically closed. And are there what kind of protocols are in place at the police station?
Well, the police station has opened for appointment only. So they have had people come in. We've had a few people come in to meet with the chief, particularly around the protests that are going on and talking about that. But the chief invites them in, their temperature is taken. Then they're allowed to come in to the chief's office behind. It's not open for the public to stop in, but you can make an appointment if you need to speak to an officer or one of the administrators down there.
Great. Okay, that's really all I have as well. But I did want to mention the town election and town meeting. So town meeting is Monday coming up. I have that right?
That's correct.
As we've talked about in the past, the town meeting has been pared down to just the articles necessary to allow us to basically have a budget and run the town fiscally over the next 12 months. And, so the public is still invited. There will be COVID-19 safety protocols in place. So we will be setting up the seating so as to maintain proper distancing. Masks will be required. I want to thank this board. I also want to thank the Finance Committee for being willing to accept some alternate seating arrangements for the boards. It's just in order to be able to create proper distancing on the podium itself. So thanks to all of you. So it'll look a little bit different, but functionally be about the same. And the election, there has been an opportunity for mail-in ballots. I suppose you can still do that, although your time to get it and get it back is getting short. So the polling places will be open, but only from 12 to 4, and at the typical polling place that you're used to going to. And the same thing, there'll be protections in place to try to maintain proper distancing and protect poll workers and those people that are voting. So we encourage everyone to vote.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, the absentee ballots are due on Monday, June 22nd, at noontime, the day before the election. And the other mail-in ballots are due June 19th, this coming Friday. So either get a ballot, go online and you can get the ballot request, and if you can get that completed by June 19th, absentee ballots are due June 22nd.
Yeah. So
time
is short for that stuff. Got to act fast. Okay.
Yeah.
So we go to that. Next up is announcements, roundtable, correspondence, and business topics. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have two brief ones. First, I might as well start with the food pantry list, as I'm looking at multiple screens simultaneously. This is the biggest one, so it's kind of calling at me. They posted yesterday for the Mike Chizzy Food Pantry. They are looking for tomato paste, jelly. I'm assuming that's in terms of jelly or jams. And if I could, I know that Michelle always looks for low sugar, low salt options for these types of products. Cranberry sauce, hot cocoa. I'm assuming it's the mix, not the liquid. Frosting, cake frosting, quick bread, paper towels, and of course, as always, any type of cleaning supplies. that you may be able to get your hands on, or detergents or things like that. I know they're always in short or significant demand. The second thing that I would like to share with the community is that this past Saturday, I met with a young man, a Boy Scout, member of Troop 131, which meets over at St. Mark's Parish, a young man by the name of Evan Fairbridge. He contacted me via the town's website and requests that we got together and we discussed an item of significant town interest for a merit badge, which he's specifically looking to get the citizenship in the community badge. And the topic that he chose to discuss was the sewerage project, of all things. So I get to come up to the center of town, and I spent, I think we were together for about 2 hours, and we went over the lay of the land. We discussed, where it's going to start, where it's going to end. We discussed the pros and the cons, and some of the questions that he had about, potential impact. I was very excited to see, because this young man, we've had some really strong Eagle Scout candidates come out of Sutton, and I definitely see this young man as ranking. So I would like to thank him personally, and I look forward to hear that he successfully completes this badge. Excellent. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I just have one other thing just popped in my head in terms of the town election. Let's just remember that those of us who traditionally are in the 3rd precinct down in Wilkes, that we vote at the high school now. I know the last couple of elections that has come up as an issue. So let's just remember that we have to make the trip up to the center of town and vote in one of the 2 gyms or wherever the signs take us. So don't go down to Station 3. There is no voting down there. And that, Mr. Chairman, is all I have. Thank you.
Excellent. Great reminder. Wendy?
I have nothing this evening. Thank you so much.
Very good. Jonathan?
The only thing I have to add is just to encourage residents to go to the businesses that are open or the restaurants that are open and support them. It's really important that we help our neighbors out or our local businesses in any way possible during this time. Some of us, are fortunate enough to have our jobs and have good situations. And so I just, want us to recognize the people in the community who are having a difficult time with their small businesses or whatever their situation is, and just remember that and support them any way we can. And that, that's what really separates us as a town. And I think we need to be really just aware of that. And I know people are doing that, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Great. Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing to add except for Jesse. Thank you for sharing that story with us. That's a great story. Just the young people in town. Those are just a really inspiring kind of things that the young people in this town can do. So that's great. So
thank you for that. I only had to mention one thing. There is a peaceful protest planned for Friday afternoon in the center of town. And I just wanted people to be aware of it, so that if you're in the center of town, just be cautious. There'll be, potentially some people up there marching peacefully. Of course, we remind everyone that peaceful is important. So, thank you. That's all I have. Anything else from anybody?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one little note. Tonight's meeting was live streamed to the Town of Sutton cable YouTube channel. It was also live streamed to broadcast on the local access station. So we're getting better at this, and really kudos to Christine Hicks and Pam Nichols for all their work that they're doing. They think outside the box, and that's great. So thank you to both of them, and that's all I have.
That's really good. Thank you. They have been really working hard to extend their knowledge and abilities here through all of this. So, thank you, Christine. I know you're back there somewhere. All right, then I think we would accept a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. 5-0. Thank you very much, everybody.